Morning, Mayor.
Good morning. How are you?
Good.
I'm sitting in an office with a dark sky. It's nighttime, an artificial light.
I think the worst is yet to come.
Well, so they say. We'll see. I'm not one to panic. So,
Okay.
so I told Sally, I said, let's just wait and see what happens this afternoon. I understand Fayette County schools are closed.
Yes.
Mhm.
And everybody around us.
And I apologize right off that I can't stay. I wish I could stay for the whole meeting, but I have, my schedule doesn't allow me to.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, well, it's 8:30 and I think, Chris, we can go ahead and get started. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We are
Okay.
recording this meeting, by the way.
All right. Well, first of all, good morning to everyone. And we will just go ahead and proceed by the way the agenda is written. And just want to say thanks for joining us today. And as we go forward on this day, just want to remind everybody to stay weather aware because we are under, I guess, a severe storm watch or warning just about all day today. So make sure if you have employees that are working outside that they also are weather aware for today, that and pay attention to the weather. So we'll go ahead and get started. And the first presentation or speaker on our agenda is our mayor, Linda Gordon. And Mayor, go ahead and get started.
All right. Thank you, Glenn. Good morning, everybody. I wish I were seeing you in person. It's been a long time since I've been able to talk to you, but I do remember the wonderful meeting. I think it was back in 2019, probably, before everything went south, right? And so it is wonderful to be here and talk with you. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of my priorities. And, I just preface it all with saying that when I stop and think about all the things that government does, it's astounding to me. It's, we do it all, really. And so much of it is quiet work that the public never sees or hears about. And so we are, I say a lot, we are where the rubber meets the road. And for some of you, that's literal, right? But we deliver most of the services that every day provide a great quality of life for the people who live here. And as we continue to grow, we know now we're almost 325,000 people who rely on us. So it will come as no surprise to you that as we look to the next 4 years, I have several priorities, and I can assure you that on November the 9th, we hit the ground running as if nothing had ever happened, and we just kept going. So here are some of my priorities, and they're things that are not necessarily in any particular order, but they all continue to be high on my list. And if you don't hear something in your division on this list of priorities, it doesn't mean it's not a priority, but they only let me have a few minutes, right? So first of all, I want to mention a new city hall. As you know, I served on council for 16 years, and every single mayor that I worked with proposed a new city hall. And so I'm determined that we will get this done. And in a few minutes, you're going to hear from Brandy Peacher on my staff, who's here to talk about our space study, which I put in my budget. It's in the budget and it's currently going on. And that is the very first step toward a new city hall. And the process, I will say, is going to start with all of you, because we need a good picture of what kind of space all of you need for your divisions. And what I want is a new, efficient, modern city hall, a place where our employees enjoy coming every day, and a place where we can continue to meet the needs of our growing city. I am not looking for a Taj Mahal or even a Mercedes-Benz. And we don't know what this will be, whether it will be a renovated building, whether it will be whatever, but we are looking downtown because I believe our city hall needs to be downtown. Next, I want to talk a little bit about violence prevention, because as all of you know, right at the beginning of the pandemic and continuing forward, all across the nation, violence exploded. And violence prevention has to do with not only violence on the streets, but violence in the homes, violence with young people. It's a very complex issue. And the causes of violence are many, and they are varied. And so there are several divisions throughout government working on things that impact violence. You can name them off: public safety, social services, housing, public works, parks, One Lexington, workforce development. And that really only talks about a few of them. Because if you look around our city and think about the services that we provide, almost everything has a tie to violence and violence prevention. And so, you know, it's a high priority, and we're seeing some really good results. I look forward to a cleaner, safer city. People tell me all the time who come in from out of town what a clean city we have. So we want to keep that. It's not only about clean streets, it's about you know, fewer sanitary overflows, no litter, all that kind of thing. And people notice it, and we really are thought of as a clean city. So we'll continue all those efforts. So in the big area of quality of life, there's a lot. And nowadays, as many of you know, people can live anywhere in the world and do their job because so many of them work remotely. And so our quality of life is really the key to our prosperity here. And it's a major contributor to our health, to our happiness. Our residents expect us to provide a real high quality of life. And of course, so do I. And I think so do you. And so we think of things like parks. We have either 100 or a little over 100 parks, a little over 4,000 acres of parkland. And our folks who live here and visit here enjoy our parks. They enjoy the arts, they enjoy our celebrations, special events, and all kinds of things like that that have nothing to do with people's work. You know, they want to enjoy things with their families and their friends. And so, speaking of celebrations, we have a big one coming up, and I'm putting a big focus on it. In 2025, our city will celebrate its 250th anniversary. And this is a big deal. We were formed a year before the Declaration of Independence was signed, and I think that's pretty special in itself. And so I'm putting together a commission for the 250th anniversary. And among other things, we will have festivals and events, and we're looking at how we can do some very special things with the arts to celebrate our city's birthday. Always under all of these things that we do, we are working to grow jobs. And of course, I go back to the quality of life issue. one of the reasons we're able to grow jobs is because of our quality of life. Companies want to take their employees where they can have good quality of life. So that's a key to our city's future. And in this way, we expand our tax base, and we're able to afford new initiatives. So one of my big initiatives has been on ag tech. We are perfectly situated here for ag tech businesses, whether they're research and development, whether they are companies that are looking at us to relocate from other places. We have some of those right now doing that. They're looking at Lexington. We have land out in the ag area. We have, farms now that are being used for growing particular crops that are used in research. We're actively working on this. And I have partnered with the University of Kentucky, the State Commissioner of Agriculture, and Alltech to get this up and running. We have formed a nonprofit called the Bluegrass Ag Tech Development Corp. And we have received a matching $1 million grant from the Kentucky Ag Development Board. So we are off and running. And I believe we can be a national hub for ag tech. And so that has also been a major initiative that will continue. So I want to say a few things more that aren't about specifics. They're really about you, because you are the folks who drive our excellent city services. And every day you come into work and you make things better. And I always want to hear your ideas for our city, because I think some of the best ideas come from you and from the people who live here. So one of the questions or comments that I frequently get when I'm out and about is how wonderful our city is. Or people say, Mayor, you're doing a wonderful job. And what I tell them is, it is a team effort. It's not about me, it's about you. And I say that because you're the folks who come and work every day, and you inspire your own employees, and you're the folks who make it work. And we all know that the team is everything. It is all about a strong team. And so I just appreciate your leadership, and I appreciate our commissioner's leadership, and our CAO, my chief of staff, our CAO's team. We just have wonderful teams throughout government, and that's really what makes us tick. And so with that, I know I've only really mentioned a few of my priorities, but there are many things throughout government that continue to be priorities and that drive our work every day. So I'm hoping soon I get to see all of you in person. And if not, maybe I'll see you in your different divisions when I'm out and about. And I appreciate this time, Glenn. Thank you very much. Send me your ideas. That's really what I want. And so with that, everybody be safe today. We have a different weather day, so be safe, and thank you for all your good, hard work. Thanks,
thank you.
Glenn. I wish
you,
I
Mayor,
could stay, but I can't.
We understand.
All right.
Thank you for joining us today.
Okay, thanks so much.
Yes, ma'am. Well, we'll go ahead and bring Brandy on, and Brandy is going to give us an update on the City Hall space study.
Thanks, Glenn. Good morning,
Good morning,
everybody. Good morning. Well, thanks, Mayor, for really setting us off on the right foot related to this topic. I know it's something that's been talked about for a long, long time, and I have confidence that Mayor Gorton and all of us that will be working on it, including all of you all that we're speaking to this morning, we're going to get it done. So very excited about that. I am joined today by our consulting team, Ernst & Young. Some members of their team are here with us. I'm going to speak just briefly about why we're doing this, how we're doing this, and what the intent of this current City Hall programming and space needs study entails. And then I'm going to hand it over to Ernst & Young for a few moments so that they can really share with us their process and what we all can expect to experience through the next few months. So I am putting on the screen. Hopefully that is being seen. So as the mayor already said, and I did as well, this is a space analysis study. It's going to define exactly what our needs are. And of course, the intent is to look at the possibility of consolidating our downtown city facilities. This study will determine our needs. So looking at all of our city departments, and as the mayor alluded to, we don't know exactly what we're moving into. Are we looking at a renovation, a relocation, a new build? We don't know that yet, but this assessment will give us the information we need to determine what our options are for future government offices and support facilities. This is really the first step in this relaunch of this effort. Keep in mind, we are building upon some of the work that was done in previous studies. I believe in the last one from 2017, 2018, they even called for this planning study in and of itself, because a lot of what was previously done was based upon assumptions, based upon industry standards or benchmarking. This allows us to define what is truly our need so that we can then use that information to inform a more specific alternative analysis, cost schedule, site selection, so on and so forth toward a final project. We, like the mayor said, and I've already said, we are not new to this topic. This is just a short list of those studies that were done previously, some of them from 1999 even, but we're really going to reflect upon what has changed in our way of operating now that we are in 2023, post-pandemic, and the way that technology is changing the way we work. But what we did learn from all of those studies and what we know from our day-to-day life in our buildings is that our current facilities are inadequate for our needs. We all know we were temporarily, I say that with air quotes, we were temporarily put into the city hall that we're in today, the government center. But has been a long-term stay there, but not that the facilities were ever made to fit our exact needs as a government. We do know there's deferred maintenance issues and that some of those costs we would need to assess as how that impact related to costs for moving ahead. We also know that we're downtown, that's prime real estate. And so that would be part of the conversation in the future as to how we determine where we go in the downtown area. But I think what's most interesting is why we're looking at the consolidation of our buildings of Swito, Phoenix Building, and 200 East Main for this effort is because we're so separated. It causes, I believe, inefficiencies for many of us who are trying to work amongst the different divisions who are in those facilities, but it also creates a confusion for the people we serve. Folks may show up to Phoenix Building who need to be at the government center, vice versa, or they need to hop back and forth due to various reasons that they're visiting us. So the scope of this project, as I already said, would identify the needs in those three facilities and help us to identify how we can proceed and build or renovate a new modern facility that helps us to work better, us to work more efficiently and comfortably, make us want to come to this building more so every day, but also be welcoming to all of our constituents. So I'll reiterate this before I hand it off to our consultants. As a reminder, this is not a site study. We will not assess different locations in downtown. We will not determine the exact site of this project based on this effort. This is not a facilities condition assessment. Our general services team is top notch and has kept track of a lot of that. And of course, we can continue to build upon that, but it is separate from this effort with Ernst & Young. This is not a design for a new or renovated city hall. So the materials you see in the upcoming months will be more about proximities and adjacencies and the functionality amongst our different departments and divisions. And this does not get into our funding strategy. We may look at what our overall cost estimating may be, but we will determine our funding strategy as we proceed internally. Our assessment will include a number of these items, and I'm not going to read through these today, but I'm going to leave some time for Ernst & Young to really dig into what it is we expect for them to do. So I'm going to hand it over to Mark and Catherine. If you guys would introduce yourself and tell us about your study.
Great, thank you, Brandy, and a pleasure to join you all this morning. My name is Catherine Von Sager, and I've been with Ernst & Young for 25 years, helping our clients both in the public and private sector assess their real estate needs, optimize their portfolio, make it more efficient, and many of the things, Brandy, that you talked about, we've been really helping clients with since the pandemic, as everyone considers new ways of working, what's hybrid, what's not, and how they bring in technology and other items to better support these remote and new ways of working, I guess I should say. I'll let Mark introduce himself and then walk quickly through the sort of 10-week project timeline and what we've outlined to accomplish.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Brandy, and thank you, Mayor and team. So Mark held 15 years with EY. I'll be sort of the day-to-day project manager on this, part of our government public sector real estate team. So as Catherine said, we focus on real estate strategy, real estate operations, and playbooks for government public sector clients. And this is a really nice opportunity for us to come in and really think about what your space needs to look like and resemble in the future. We're going to be doing, obviously, a good deal of analysis on departments in the 3 buildings today that you've mentioned, Brandy, trying to understand really how they work, to what extent folks are remote or hybrid or on premise. And we know that there's a pretty wide variety in that. When you look at government departments and divisions, right? Because there's still customer-facing activities that need to happen. And while there's been technology changes and departments are evolving with the pandemic and new ways of working, sometimes there's still that in-person touch that's important for government. So, we try to take a pretty holistic view of things like that. And really come up with the right mix for you, not using any type of predetermined leading practice, or it must be a certain way. But I guess what I can kind of quickly do is just talk through this timeline and approach. I know we've got a packed agenda today. So part of the analysis, we're going to come in starting basically next week with the data gathering, which is already underway, thanks to Brandy and team that have been compiling a good number of documents for us to review. We'll be establishing the baseline for the 3 buildings, which is basically who's occupying them, what types of departments, how many people, how many square feet, types of spaces. We'll be on site next week to do kind of the first round of site tours and really get familiar with these spaces and get the visuals and be able to see it. And then we'll be moving forward with a template that will go out to each of the departments that are using these spaces today. That'll kind of happen in parallel to us doing a number of interviews with some of the department leaders. But the template will help us really understand how much are you growing in certain areas? Do you intend to be hiring, adding FTEs, need more space for new folks in the future? And also get into, like I said, the ways of working, how much of this is really happening remote, hybrid, on premise, and so forth. And then we will basically be coming back towards the middle or end of this with, a handful of scenarios on how you might look to restack or optimize the space. And that's the point when we'll be looking specifically at those 3 buildings. Is there enough capacity? Does it fit sort of the guiding principles and objectives of what the mayor and Brandy have laid out today? And to the extent that you may not be able to fit all of your needs within that footprint, what are the options? Is it an addition? Is it a renovation project? Is it a new purchase? Is it something, totally different? And we'll be pretty open-minded when it comes to, putting together those 2 or 3 scenarios on how all the teams, all the departments can fit into the footprint or what might be needed, to make that happen. Just real quick, the one piece that I did not mention that'll happen sort of in the middle of this is doing a little bit of work on the space standards and some of the other kind of occupancy ESG sustainability standards as well. We are partnering with a Kentucky-based architecture firm called Kersey and Kersey, and they will be leading that part of the project, bringing a lot of local presence and more detailed architecture experience. So yeah, I think with that, 10-week effort, it's going to be very collaborative, and we will be looking forward to reaching out to many of you, I think, and working together on this, and certainly want all of your feedback and inputs, because you all will know the space best and how it's used and what you'd like to see in the future.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Catherine. I appreciate that. This is a big scope of work that they're going to be doing for us. So I appreciate that very, very brief overview. But as the mayor said at the beginning of this, and we'll try and wrap this up here, so if there are any questions, is that we need your input. Each department, each division, each section within those divisions, you all have certain ways of operating that we do not understand. You all are the internal experts. And so we need you to participate throughout this process in order for us to fully understand what it is we need our facilities to look like, to function like in the future, in order for us to work to the highest and best ability that we can. As Mark mentioned, his team will be on site next week, March 8th and 9th. You will see us walking around the facilities, and I'll probably reach out to each of you who are in these 3 buildings to see if you have a staff member who could join us as we tour your floor and your department. So if there are any questions, or if there's anything in particular you want to highlight, we would welcome that. Additionally, there will be group interviews, user group interviews. So we'll do some of those in person next week on the 9th. So stay tuned for an email from me today to try and schedule those. I know this is short notice, so if we can't get to all of these on the 9th, we will do some Zoom as well. But the intent is to get to the major user groups so that it can inform their work. And then lastly, responding to the survey and request for data as we continue forward. So just if this is a very quick turnaround, as you saw, a 10-week time frame. So I apologize in advance for the request to turn around these requests very, very quickly. But I know that you all will know the answer to these, because it's about your daily life and your facilities. So appreciate your time today to share with you what's going on over the next few weeks. And we look forward to figuring out what it is exactly we need so we can take that next step toward a new and improved City Hall. Glenn, that's it for us now. If there are any questions, we're happy to take those if you'd like to do that.
That will be fine. If anyone has any questions, we can take those now if you like. Or if not, Brandy is always able to take questions by email.
That's right. That's right.
Well, Brandy, doesn't look like there's any questions. So thank you for today, and thank you for our consultants for joining us as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good day. The next item on the agenda is going to be postponed until our next meeting. So what we'll do now is bring on Nick Brock, who will talk about the new translation feature that we have on our government website. Nick, go ahead.
Hey, I'm going to share my screen with you all, and I've got a little presentation just to go over the translation feature that lives on our main website, lexingtonky.gov. So I'll start with a little background. When we relaunched the website in 2016, it had a Google Translate feature. However, Google stopped the support for this module that we had built into the website in 2018. So when we did our 2019 refresh, our vendor recommended removing the old module for security purposes. And so Apex, the vendor who develops and manages the website's code base, reassured us that users could translate the website based on the browser's default language and device's default language settings. The issue with this method is that only some browsers or newest devices have that ability to automatically have it translation built in. If users have old browsers and old devices, we're missing this segment of the population. This really came to light during the COVID-19 pandemic. It felt like we missed some of the population. So in March of 2022, we had a meeting to talk about translation on the website. It included Councilmember Jennifer Reynolds, CAO Hamilton, Isabel Taylor of Global Lex, and other stakeholders in the city to discuss adding a translation feature to the city website. From this meeting, it was determined that we needed to add the support of a translation feature to supplement the browser and device translations that we had. So, a little about the process. We engaged with our vendor, Apex, who manages the code for the website. We wanted to get a quote from them about what it would, how it would affect the website and the cost for installing the translation feature module. So they came back with two different quotes for us. One being an option that was a little less expensive up front, but had a subscription cost, and the other was a little more expensive up front, but had no subscription cost. We forwarded this to the CAO, to the council, and the mayor. It was decided to go with the module that costs a little more up front, but had no subscription costs. And during this time, we also reached out to Global Lex Call 311, and E911 to get information about the top languages spoken in Lexington. And for those of you all who are curious as to what those might be, the languages are Spanish, Swahili, French, Nepali, Kinyarwanda, Chinese, Japanese, and Arabic. So the translation feature was approved and added to the FY23 budget. And in the fall, we began work on configuring the module that we decided to go with. That work took about 3 months. And during that time, we also did some research and development of the user interface. That way people would know. We looked around the country to see how different cities had handled their translation features and how people could interact with them. So we took some best practices from all over and added it to ours. In the translation feature, we made sure to add the top 9 languages to the beginning of the list, and then it goes alphabetically from those top 9 languages. And overall, the translation feature has 81 different languages that it can translate the website into. Also during this time, we did several rounds of testing. We wanted to make sure it didn't break anything on the website that we currently had. And we also wanted to make sure that it worked well for our mobile users. And then in December of 2022, we quietly launched the first week in December. With the website, we tend to not to make big announcements about features until they've been tested by users. We do this to make sure we have the right user experience, and we also use this time to see if the new feature breaks anything else on the website. So we've not gotten any negative feedback. We've gotten a few positive comments about the translation feature, which is great. And it's the few little things that it did break on the website has been fixed. So we're ready to kind of make a more of an announcement about the translation feature. Also that week, after it was quietly launched, a notice went out to the CAOs in the mayor's office that the feature had been launched, and it was announced that week in the CAO's weekly report. So how it works. Our translation feature currently translates the website into 81 languages. We've been working with, let's see, it translates it to 81 different languages. You can access it from any page of lexingtonky.gov. However, it does not work with PDFs. So we've been working with departments and divisions across the government to make sure important information lives on a web page and not just in a PDF. That way that information can be translated. And so far, I think that our departments and divisions have done a great job of making sure all the information lives on the website that they need people to have. The use of the translation feature on the website, I think, is pretty easy. You just click or tap the translate button at the top of the page. You scroll through the language list. Then you click or tap the language you want to use. The website will then translate to that language, and it will stay translated in that language for 24 hours before it resets to your browser's default language. And you can go back to English the same way by clicking the translate button. There at the very top, it has English, and then just tap or click that again to get the website back to English. Let's see. And then here is a quick little video of how it works. See, you click the translate button, see all the different languages, you select the one you want, and the website goes to that language. This is information about camps. So it automatically translates the website into the language that you've selected, no matter where you navigate to on the website. So moving forward, first, we're working on adding analytics to see how many people use the translation feature. I'm a numbers person, so I want to be able to report out how many people are using it and who we may be missing in the population. Secondly, more languages will be added as they are developed. From what I've been told by our vendor, a developer who speaks the language has to develop that language for the translation feature. So for instance, if a Dutch person, if we want to add Dutch to the translation feature, it would take someone who can speak Dutch to actually do the coding for that part of the module. Then it would be uploaded to our module and installed and updated. So I guess that pretty much wraps up all I've got. Does anyone have any questions?
Nick, do you have any preliminary numbers as far as not necessarily what language it's been changed to, but how people have been going to it and using the feature?
Unfortunately, I don't right now. Like I said, we're working with our vendor to get analytics installed specifically on that portion of the website. We are setting up Google tags, which allows us to hit buttons specifically to see which, how many times a button's being clicked on the site.
Okay. We have Teresa Maynard with a question.
Of course, I have a question. Hi, Nick.
Patricia.
Should we set something up with you if we have multiple page PDFs that we need that we've had on the website and that we need to continue to put on the website?
Sure. We can set something up and talk through those. I'll be happy to do that with you guys. Like I said, the most important thing is if there's any important information that lives within those PDFs, we need to get that on the website, either on its own page or on an existing page. That way it can be translated easily.
Okay.
So I'd be happy to set something up with you guys.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Amy Baker, go ahead, Amy.
Amy Baker.
Amy Baker has a question, or she did. Guess not.
Okey-doke. Don't see any other questions, Nick. Thank you for that update.
Of course, and if anyone would like to email me with any questions or set up a meeting to talk about this more in depth, I'll be happy to do that. You can find me in the global directory. My email is nbrock@lexingtonky.gov.
Thank you.
Bye.
Next presenter is, will be talking about coordinating an LFUG response to homelessness, and that is Jeff Herron.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Jeff.
Working to share my screen with everyone. So I am excited to share with you guys some brief updates from the Office of Homelessness and to also share how you might support the work that we're presently doing to address homelessness in Fayette County. First, I wanted to start with just a little bit of background on this office. As many of you may know, this office was created in 2014. That came as a recommendation from the Mayor's Greater Good Report. And soon after its creation, it expanded to become an office of 2 staff, which it remains to this day. When you think in the context of all that this office does, that is a relatively small team. I often say that we are a small but mighty office. We accomplish a lot with the staffing resources that we have. With only 2 individuals, however, we are not able to function as a direct services option. We tend to rely on our community partners to provide the direct services that are needed for those experiencing homelessness. And instead, we serve primarily in the capacity of being a funding and coordination office. Oftentimes, I will share with people that want to know more about what this office does that we serve to coordinate, facilitate, educate, and advocate. We raise awareness, we bring in ideals about models and best practices, we work to establish funding and allocate funding out to our partners, and make sure that we're coordinating efforts and responses to homelessness that are larger than any one agency or entity, but really take the entire community of stakeholders in Fayette County to adequately address needs. Additionally, this office, while we do not serve in a direct service capacity, we do engage in a lot of resource navigation, both for persons that are in need of assistance, as well as those that might be working with that population. Since the establishment of this office, there have been some significant decreases in our homeless population. And we've also managed to pilot over 50 new programs through the use of the Innovative and Sustainable Solutions to End Homelessness Fund. Many of those programs have rolled on to sustainable sources of funding and continue to operate to this day and really serve to better our system. We've also managed to achieve significant growth of the continuum of care, growing that from 16 partners in 2014 to over 55 partners today. However, despite our successes, there have been a lot of recent challenges in this work. That includes COVID-19. COVID-19 had a number of impacts, not only in terms of how it has done things like affect the rental market, but it also really took a lot of the momentum out of the work that our system was doing. For a better period of 2 years, we were really working to make sure that we were keeping our population safe and finding strategies to continue to effectively operate, rather than necessarily being able to focus solely on driving our efforts forward in innovative ways. We're also seeing that as we emerge from the pandemic, our rental market is definitely a tough one. Prices for rent are increasing, oftentimes pricing out providers who are operating on grant funding. And additionally, it's a competitive market. Even when individuals have resources like a voucher or rental assistance available to them, rental units are quickly being snagged up, and landlords who potentially would have gotten a handful of applications for a vacancy in the past can now receive 100 or 200 applications for a single vacancy. Additionally, a lot of the flood of funding that came in at the start of the pandemic is now coming to an end, meaning that individuals who were able to maintain housing with those resources are now faced with having to solely do that on their own and not necessarily having the safety net of those assistance funds being available. Additionally, inflation and cost of living increases mean that more than just housing has become pricier for individuals. Impacts to things like the cost of food often contribute to the cost burden that individuals experience for housing. Given all these factors, it's not incredibly surprising that we saw an increase with this year's Lex count. While we are still working on additional data validations needed in order to release our official numbers, I wanted to take the opportunity today to share with you some preliminary information. These numbers may change slightly, but we are confident that this is going to be kind of the ballpark in which our official numbers will land. We conducted that Lex count on the evening of January 25th, and that is a count of the individuals in our geographic region which are experiencing literal homelessness. So those that are residing in emergency shelter, transitional housing, and in unsheltered locations. So this year, we have arrived at our preliminary total of 811 persons found to be experiencing homelessness. So how does that compare to previous years? Last year, our count totaled 715 persons that were experiencing homelessness in Fayette County. And so that would mean that this year we're roughly about 100 persons over that number, or approximately a 13.4% increase. However, I think it is important to kind of contextualize this information. There were some challenges in being able to safely conduct a full Lex count in 2021 and 2022. In 2021, our community applied for a HUD waiver to allow us to forego the street count that had to do with the high burden of requirements that HUD had on communities that wished to conduct a count. And in 2022, while we resumed a full street count, it definitely modified our process. And so I think that those 2 years are definitely an outlier for us. Looking back to 2019, that was a count that previous director Polly Ruddick and I oftentimes would point to as being one of our most accurate counts, because that count took place during a polar vortex, meaning that we would definitely see a higher number of individuals accessing shelter under those weather conditions than normal. On that year, we had 787 persons that were identified as experiencing homelessness on the night of the count. Comparing this year's total to 2019, that would be only a 3% increase. To further contextualize this, I wanted to share kind of a longitudinal look at our Lex count data. We had a significant drop in homelessness from 2017 to 2018, due in part to some changes with what types of programs were counted. So transitional housing programs that were not exclusively dedicated for those experiencing homelessness were removed from the count, which allowed us to see a decrease from over 1,000 to 685 persons in 2018. Since that time, we've had some increases and decreases from year to year, but we're seeing that homelessness within our community is remaining relatively stable. While definitely this raises a challenge for us to improve and see what we can do to drive these numbers down further, it is definitely still encouraging in the sense that despite the challenges of things like the pandemic, we've been able to relatively keep our numbers somewhat constant. The average and the median both would run around 713 or 702 persons. So even though we're seeing an increase this year, we're overall just seeing some fluctuations up and below this baseline number. So given the increase that we're seeing in this year's Lex count numbers, I want to encourage everyone to be anticipating that as we enter the warmer weather months, we may start to hear some talk about a growth of our homeless population. While we don't see a significant growth in our data alone, part of this is due in part to seasonal trends with our population. So the Lex count gives us a snapshot of what homelessness looks like in Fayette County on any given night. So one thing that we need to keep in mind is that actual numbers can fluctuate throughout the year. Additionally, each year we see a trend wherein our population tends to decrease their access of emergency shelter as we enter the spring months and through into the fall. I pulled some data from our database representing 4 different point in time counts. That would be April, July, October of 22, and January of 23. And you can see that in the springtime, we definitely have fewer individuals that are accessing emergency shelters. That can be due in part to a number of factors, such as maybe preferring not to be in a congregate setting, maybe having difficulty following rules that might be in place in those settings. But it's a consistent trend that we see each year. So definitely want to make sure that everyone has the expectation that with weather changes, as well as closure of seasonal shelters and the slight increase that we found within our Lex count data, our population is likely to be more visible during the spring and summer months. In order to address that, I wanted to share some of the efforts that are currently underway by my office. Right now, LFUCG funds 3 different street outreach teams, and those teams are going to be working around the clock to ensure that services are available to those that are in need. They work to develop individualized housing plans to identify the best pathways of permanent housing for all individuals that are in need. Additionally, LFUCG committed funding for 2 different ARPA transitional housing programs. Those programs are going to target individuals specifically that would have barriers to accessing other forms of shelter, and work to quickly rehouse them in transitional programs that can help to stabilize their situation and transition them on to permanent housing. Additionally, since I came into this role in August, this office has put significant work into trying to improve its housing triage system, which is the access point that connects individuals that are in need with housing and service options. We have resumed bi-weekly meetings of our housing triage system partners, making sure that we are engaging in case conferencing, that we can identify and eliminate barriers to individuals being housed. We're also engaging in significant cleanup of our prioritization list. That is making sure that we are trying to exit persons that are known to no longer be in our system, no longer active with any providers, or who have been permanently housed. Additionally, we're working on a policy update for our housing triage system, which is going to allow us to update and more effectively serve those in need. Finally, as we come into the next fiscal year, this office is developing several RFPs that are going to pilot additional programming to meet the needs of this population. So finally, I'd like to talk about how you all can help. I mentioned at the start of this presentation that this office is an office of 2. That means that we definitely rely on a lot of assistance from partners, both internal and external. One thing that you can do is definitely to make sure that we are aware of issues such as homeless encampments and individuals that are in need of assistance. I would ask that you not assume that we are aware if you happen to see an encampment or see somebody who might be rough sleeping in a public location. Those are things that we would request that you would report to this office so that we have an ability to investigate and respond appropriately. So here I want to make sure that the emphasis is on letting us know of true encampments. That would be persons that are trying to attempt to reside in public spaces or to establish camps or dwelling, not necessarily individuals that would just be utilizing public spaces. As a reminder, all individuals have a right to access public spaces like parks. And just simply having a presence in our community is not something that we want to encourage you to report to our office or to law enforcement. What you need to focus on is if individuals are in those spaces and again, trying to establish a dwelling or residency, or if there are certain behaviors that they're engaging in that are interfering with others being able to enjoy those public spaces. As a note, I want to make sure that you would direct certain items to more appropriate parties. For example, if individuals are engaging in aggressive or criminal behavior, that would be best served as a law enforcement contact. Similarly, if you see individuals that are experiencing an emergency or a crisis, that would also be a contact that would be more appropriate for a resource like 911. We want to make sure that individuals that are experiencing a true emergency are being connected with timely and appropriate assistance. And that is not something that necessarily an entity like Street Outreach would be able to provide. So if you do see something like a homeless encampment on your drive into work, maybe you're seeing some individuals that are rough sleeping on a porch or a sidewalk, those are really the types of situations that we want to be sure that we're getting some assistance in being able to identify and address. We obviously have a large geographic area, and despite having multiple teams, it's a challenge for us to always be aware of all issues within our community. I've provided here contact information for both myself and for my staff person, Marissa Webb. I'd encourage you to reach out to us at any time if you experience one of these issues, or if you have other concerns related to the homeless population that we could potentially assist with. This work, I often say, is work that takes an entire community. Homelessness is a community problem. It requires a community solution. And that is where the rest of the LFUCG team can definitely help to make sure that we are aware of issues and responding appropriately. At this time, I'm definitely open to take questions.
Are there any questions for Jeff? Jeff, on a day like today, under the current weather outlook that we're under, what precautions are we taking as far as finding or looking for people on the street that could be impacted by the weather?
Yeah, so we do, as many of you know, have a emergency winter weather plan that is in effect. I'm sorry, not in effect, but is operating through the winter. With this not being necessarily winter weather, we have not activated that plan for this evening. However, I did send out a severe weather alert this morning. The Office of Homelessness Prevention and Intervention is requesting that day centers and emergency shelters would allow individuals to stay indoors. Particularly, a lot of the weather looks like it's going to be most severe during daytime hours. And I've been in communication with our street outreach teams who are doing some expanded outreach with those who are unsheltered to make sure that they're aware of forecasted conditions, being aware of their surroundings, paying attention to the weather, and definitely seeking shelter as appropriate.
Okay. Was there any other questions for Jeff? Chris, I see two people on the list. Is Teresa and Amy, are they questions for Jeff?
No, those were the questions for Brandy.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Jeff. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Before we bring Arthur on for the next, we had a question for Brandy. So if we can bring Brandy back on to answer that question. Brandy, the question was from Adrian Thacker from Parks and Rec. Will there be an opportunity for those of us who work outside of downtown to contribute ideas about shared use space when we might need to work downtown?
That is a great question, Adrian. And you have hit the nail on the head in regards to how we need to assess how we're utilizing our space, because it's not just for those who are housed there permanently in our offices. So I love this idea. I'm going to take it back to the consultants and figure out exactly how we can put together an opportunity to gain meaningful feedback. But yeah, I think part of this conversation is about shared use space, those who work remote and then come in, vice versa. So there's going to be some interesting conversations about alternative work environments. So I appreciate that question. Glenn, I also had one emailed to me that I thought I might bring up. Which was, I mentioned that we would be giving tours of our facilities on the 8th and the 9th with our consultants, and that I advised for someone to represent your floor. Please, I understand this is short notice, and our facilities group, Jump Sheets team, they'll be walking us through already. So we do at least have some very knowledgeable folks who will be leading us through. So if you don't have someone, that's okay. But if you do have someone that's available to be with us at that time, I think it's just another opportunity for you to share your needs and your experiences. But I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks, Brandy. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay.
Okay, next we'll have Arthur Lucas, who'll give us an update on the upcoming diversity and inclusion workshops for directors.
All right, thank you, Glenn. Good morning, everyone. I have been asked to come on and talk about a D&I workshop that is in the works for our directors. And this particular workshop is one that's going to be in person, and it's going to be designed for our leadership, talking about creating inclusive behaviors in leaders. We're going to have a total of 4 different workshops. Four classes on 2 separate days. The classes will take place on May the 11th and May the 25th. And I will be sending out information to everyone within the next couple of weeks as we continue to work through all the details. But the design behind in-person classes is so that we can have smaller groups participating, 15 to 20 employees in the class. Classes will last approximately 2 hours, but they're going to be designed so we can have breakout sessions, in-class participation, allow Q&A with the consultant that will be conducting the classes. I think, Dr. Cleveland, Millennial Learning Concepts, did a great job for us last year. And our intentions is to build upon what has already been shared. I think last year was more about education and awareness about D&I for our leadership. But now it's time to kind of dig into the weeds and talk about different situations and have group discussions and individual discussions about D&I in the workshop. So again, this is something that's going to take place this year on May the 11th and 15th. We're going to have a total of 4 sessions, 2 on each days. And I will be sending out an email within the next couple of weeks to each of you all, as far as we're planning on assigning people to classes so that we don't have all the people from the same departments in the same classes. And we want to make sure that the classes are diverse as well. And that's pretty much it. We will be, it will be taking place as of right now within the Phoenix building. I know that, there's some changes coming to the 3rd floor conference room. So I'll say as of right now, that is the location that the classes will take place. And with that said, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask or shoot me emails as well.
Okay, thanks, Arthur. Appreciate it. Well, as we close out today's directors meeting, just one other announcement. Don't forget, starting next week, the mayor's budget hearing starts. So we're getting in budget prep mode. So you're sure by now you've gotten your information as to when your division and department will appear. So we appreciate you. One other thing, our next meeting is scheduled to be in June. So I'll be working with Hillary to get that information as we start preparing to get information on what presentations we'll have for our next directors meeting. And in closing, once again, don't forget to be weather aware today as we are under severe weather for the whole day. So just be prepared and remind your employees that work outside to be weather aware as well. So thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a great weekend.